Hey, it's Kim, and I'm back with another episode of 10-Minute Tips. Look, this one is going to knock your socks off, I promise you, and challenge you in some ways. So get your coffee and your tea, sit back and relax this next episode of 10-Minute Tips. Hi, it's Kim, and I'm back for another week of 10-Minute Tips for your relationships. 10 minutes. So, this week, I want to ask you a question. Yeah, and I want you to be honest with me. Are you a passive aggressive partner? I like to call it the PAP. The passive aggressive partner. Are you that person? Are you that passive aggressive partner? I mean, I know some of us have some aggressiveness, and we have different parts to ourselves, our personalities. But then there are some of us who may have experienced this. And even though I'm laughing, it really is a very serious situation that happens in relationships. So what is passive aggressiveness? Well, passive aggressiveness are those negative behaviors that we display in an unassertive way. Right. I mean, they're the behaviors that we display when we have an unwillingness to communicate our true feelings. They're those behaviors that are indirect, they're resistant, and they avoid communication at every cost. They avoid confrontation at every cost. So it's a form of communication, but it's a form of communication that's very ineffective, and it can be very damaging to a relationship. Most times when you do it, you really are unaware. Most people who are passive aggressive are really unaware that they are, and their behaviors follow, and they really don't know that they're doing them. Now, passive aggressive partners or mates, if you will, on the outside, they look like everybody else. They have great qualities, they have great character, they seem charming, they can be very loving, easygoing, understanding, but there is an underlining hostility and anger sometimes that lingers. And that's because they are unwilling to communicate and confront things that don't make them happy or upset them or make them mad. And so, because they're unwilling to directly communicate those feelings, they have to do it in some kind of way. So, the passive aggressive partner is that person that has all this anger and hostility on the inside, and they will not directly express it. Yes. So it's all on the inside. And then maybe they'll do things to get their point across, but it won't be in a direct way. They may be smiling on the outside, but ticked off on the inside. So when a passive aggressive partner doesn't confront issues, I tell you what happens. It leaves the mate, the other person, feeling frustrated and feeling like they are the blame for some things that are going on. Sometimes you don't even know what's going on, but you know that something is wrong. Okay, so let's look at some of these indirect behaviors that we've been talking about. And I want you to not so much look at these behaviors and think about your mate, but possibly maybe you should think about yourself. Number one, we know that passive aggressive people, they avoid confrontation altogether. So it doesn't even matter if it's something large or small. They just completely avoid confrontation. So in communication, it kind of looks like they're stonewalling or like they're just completely shutting down. So you may ask them questions and they may not answer you at all. Then number two, one who constantly complains. Yes, passive aggressive people tend to be complainers and nitpickers about certain things. Instead of just saying what they think and how they feel, they'll just put out all these little unnecessary complaints about things sometimes that are, you know, unnecessary, and some things they're just nitpicking about. Number three, they're blamers. Yes, blamers. Passive aggressive people tend to shift the blame. They don't like to take the blame, or they don't like to take responsibility for their own behavior. So they'll put the blame on someone else. And then number four, they deny their feelings. Totally deny that they're upset, that they're angry, that they feel sad, that they're feeling hostility. They deny all those feelings. So the passive aggressive person, you ask them, what's wrong? I can tell something's going on. Oh, nothing's wrong. That's what they do. They deny their feelings. And then number five, being the victim. Yes, our passive aggressive partners, they love to play the victim. They love to be the one who's hurt. My father-in-law used to call it the martyr syndrome. So yes, our passive aggressive partners tend to play the victim. Then number six, now this one gets a little sticky. They'll make comments or mean or crude remarks, and they'll say, I was just joking. But they use that phrase in order to get these mean, nasty little comments out there, all under the umbrella of, I was just joking. But it didn't feel like a joke when you heard the comment, right? Then making excuses. Yes. They love to make excuses. Why? Because, you know, they're not going to do what they said they're going to do anyway. They're passive aggressive. They're going to tell you, yes, I'm going to do this, or yes, I'll show up. I remember my mom, she was pretty passive aggressive, and I would always say, Mom, we're going to be going to shopping, or we're going to go, you know, visit this, or go here, do this and do that. You want to go? Oh, yes, I would love to go. I haven't seen that person in a long time. And when that day would come, she either would not answer her phone, or she would say, oh no, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to be able to go. But when I asked her, she knew then that she was not going to do it. So sometimes passive aggressive people, they'll make all these commitments, but they won't stick to them. And then being sarcastic. Yes, making those sarcastic, crude remarks, sarcastic about certain things that are going on. Passive aggressive people can be very sarcastic. They can be pouty, they can sulk, they can mope. And this is one that really kind of gets things in an uproar in a relationship. Sometimes they will hold back on affection and even sex. Our passive aggressive partners, they love to procrastinate, and they love to deliberately forget. And they don't just forget simple things. They'll forget important things like your birthday, your anniversary. But those are underhanded ways of getting revenge. So you have to check yourself. Am I passive aggressive? Do I do these types of things in my relationship? One thing about all of these things that I just named, all of these behaviors that I just named, one thing about them, or the thread that goes through them all, is manipulation. Yes, the passive aggressive person, they may show up as this very calm, mild, meek, sweet, humble person, but really they are very manipulative. Now, I want to talk a bit about the partner on the receiving end of all of these behaviors. And think about it. If you are a person And you may not do all of this. I'm not saying that if you are passive aggressive in some ways that you do all of these things, but it's good for us to check ourselves. It's good for us to be aware, have a sense of awareness about who we are and how we show up in our relationship. So that person on the receiving end of all of these behaviors, most times, like the passive aggressive person, they're unaware. They're unaware what's wrong. They don't know what's wrong with their partner. All they know is they pretty much are living in almost a continuous sense of frustration and irritability because they're not quite sure why that person always forgets or why that person always procrastinates. They just know that important things are not getting done or their needs are not being met. The partner of a passive aggressive person sometimes feels like they're living with a stranger because they don't really understand who that person is, and they're not really understanding why they're doing the things that they're doing. They're not even understanding if it's maybe something that they're doing. So that can make us feel like I'm living with a stranger. You know, it's like we know something is going on, but we just cannot figure it out. The needs are not getting met. So basically, that partner of a passive aggressive person tends to feel a lot of neglect. So if you're that partner, if you're that person who lives with someone who's passive aggressive, you may be asking the question, well, what can I do? How can I work with my mate if he or she is passive aggressive? And you know, it's a very difficult situation because, like I said, most times we don't know. That person who's passive aggressive doesn't know, and the person who's receiving it doesn't really understand that that's what's going on with their mate. But the best way to deal with it is just to call it out. And I'm not saying yell and scream and do it in a very unloving way, but call it out in a very loving way. Let them know that you experience them in a certain way, and that certain way makes you feel very uneasy and it makes you very frustrated. You can have those hot conversations, honest, open, and transparent. You can ask the question, is there something that I do that makes you feel that you can't tell me how you really feel? Yeah, you can ask that question. And this is one that I really like. You can ask that person, once you get an understanding and there's an awareness, you can ask that partner, is it okay for me to bring this to your attention when it happens? Passive aggressiveness can really be damaging to a relationship. It may seem funny sometimes, but it's not. And so if it gets to a point where we as a couple can't work it out, then maybe we have to do this one last thing, is seek professional help. Passive aggressiveness, not willing to talk or tell how you really feel, not willing to confront, not willing to share, but hiding behind bad behavior. These are my 10-minute tips. You take care and you stay safe.